You followed the tips from our previous episode, you hit up some yard sales and found a car full of awesome items that you're ready to flip for cash online. So what's next? How do you turn these treasures into cash? Making the most money possible selling yard sale finds online is all about strategy, presentation, and choosing the right marketplace. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. Welcome back to another episode of After School Empire, where we help teachers like you make extra money after school by launching and growing your own income-generating side hustle. As always, I'm your host, Tony Neely, and it is officially summer break for me, so I'm kicking my side hustles up into high gear, and I hope that you are too. Last week, I told you that it's hard to beat flipping yard sale finds as the GOAT side hustle for teachers during the summer. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, go back, check it out. There's lots of great tips and strategies on there to help you maybe be able to turn $5 into $100 or $50 into $1,000. You never know. Today is kind of like part 2 of that episode. Last week, we talked about how to find things to flip at yard sales. Today, we're talking about the actual selling of our yard sale treasures online. So you have a bunch of stuff to sell. Now what? The first thing you need to decide is what selling platform is going to be best for you. When it comes to selling online, not all platforms are created equal. Each one has its pros and its cons, and honestly, picking the right one can make all the difference in the world to you. There are 4 primary different types of e-commerce marketplaces where you can flip your finds, and I've tried them all. This is only a 15-minute podcast, so we won't go into crazy depth with these, but I do want you to have a general understanding of each and how they work. The first e-commerce category is what I like to call social classifieds. This is going to be something like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. The great thing about social classifieds is that there's no listing fees, and you're primarily focusing on a local audience. And since it's a local audience, that means you can meet up face-to-face to make these exchanges, and it's also great for being able to resell those bulky items that I warned you about last week that are just a pain in the butt to ship. So if you found a really cool Simpsons pinball machine for like $100 at a yard sale that you can quite literally sell for $8,000 online, but you don't want to deal with the hassle of freighting it, you can put it up on one of these social classified sites to sell it to a buyer who would be willing to come pick it up from you. Trust me, it's always better to have somebody who's willing to come load and drive away something heavy than you have to try to ship it. There are some downsides to selling on social classifieds though. First is the potential for scams. Probably 30 to 40% of the messages I receive from people inquiring about something that I'm selling on Facebook Marketplace ends up being a bot or some kind of scammer. So every time I get a message from somebody asking if an item's still available or asking me any kind of questions about the item I have up, I click on their profile to see how long they've been on Facebook. Do we have any mutual friends? Do they have feedback on Marketplace, etc.? If they just created an account 2 weeks ago, they have no posts, and the only picture of their profile looks like an OnlyFans model, I'm blocking them. These platforms can also be less structured in terms of payment and delivery, so you have to handle negotiations directly, which can be time-consuming and sometimes stressful. Not to mention, people will tell you that they want to buy something from you, and then they'll completely ghost you, never to be heard from again. I've sold a lot of items on Facebook Marketplace, and while I've never felt uncomfortable meeting someone to sell them an item, there are horror stories of people getting robbed. And sadly, one of my wife's students actually got murdered outside his apartment while selling an Xbox on Facebook Marketplace. So I always meet up in a safe public location for making these exchanges. Generally, I'll meet people during daylight hours at a high traffic spot like a Walmart parking lot. Many police stations actually have areas specifically set up now for buying and selling items in their parking lots that are well lit and have cameras recording 24/7. I don't want you to be scared. I just want you to be informed, so be smart about meeting people you meet on the internet. That doesn't just go for like selling stuff. I mean, literally, if you're going to meet somebody for the first time from the internet, make sure it's in a public place. Can you tell I've watched way too many serial killer documentaries? The second type of platform that you can sell your items on is what I call an online auction site. The number one example of this is going to be eBay. I've been selling on eBay for decades now. As I mentioned in the last episode on yard sale treasure hunting strategies, my dad even quit his job as a police dispatcher at one point to sell on eBay full time. The major benefits of an online auction site like eBay is that your items become available to broad national or even international audiences, and the auction options can actually drive prices higher for some of those more collectible or highly sought items that you might have. I've literally had items jump hundreds of dollars in the last few seconds of an auction. If you want access to the millions of eBay users without having to watch a countdown timer, then you can actually list your items as what they call a buy it now, where somebody can just click on the item that you have posted and purchase it for a set price. I love eBay, I really do, and I use it more than any other means for flipping. But the biggest downside of eBay and similar auction sites is going to be the fees. Fees can add up real quick. We're talking listing fees, selling fees, shipping fees if you choose to offer free shipping on your items, which I rarely do. So when you factor all of this in, you have an item that sells for $100, and before you know it, your net profit might only be $80. Kind of sounds like our paychecks, right? Side note about shipping. Whether you're selling through eBay or really any kind of e-commerce site where you're not meeting somebody face-to-face to make the exchange, offering free shipping can boost your listings and search results, but make sure that that cost for shipping is baked into your sales price. Additionally, if you're planning on selling items online that you're going to need to ship, go ahead and invest in a digital postal scale. They're not very expensive at all, and they're going to make sure that you have accurate costs calculated so that you don't over or undercharge for shipping. The third e-commerce category is what I call niche-specific marketplaces. For example, I collect and I sell records, so I might consider putting some of my records on Discogs. If you collect and sell Pokemon cards, then you may want to put them on TCG Player. If you're all about vintage and high-end clothing, then you may want to put your clothes on Poshmark. Niche-specific marketplaces are great for selling to a targeted audience that is looking specifically for the items that you're selling, which can command higher prices. If you have a rare butcher copy of the Beatles Yesterday and Today, you probably want to target vinyl collectors who are in search of this album and willing to pay up to $125,000 for a sealed copy of it, versus just putting it on Craigslist or something like that. Downsides of these sites that sometimes you have to have a paid subscription to list items for sale on them. Additionally, buyers on niche-specific marketplaces tend to be much more knowledgeable than your run-of-the-mill customer. So you'll need to be very detailed and accurate in your descriptions. In the Pokemon world, I've heard of people actually providing detailed ownership histories to demonstrate authenticity of a card or a pack, similar to what you would see with like high-end art. So just be sure that you're an expert on what you're selling. Doesn't mean that you have to be the world's leading researcher on whatever your niche is, but you need to be able to provide accurate descriptions and be able to tell authentic items from forgeries, and even invest in professional grading of items. Otherwise, it can lead to returns or even worse, bad reviews. Your last option is creating your own online store through something like Etsy or Shopify or even your own website. The nice thing about this option is that you have complete control over how your products are presented and sold. The downside is you need to drive your own traffic to your store, which can require a significant amount of marketing and SEO skills. In other words, you won't necessarily have a built-in customer base from day one, so it might take you some time to start generating income. Not to mention you may have to pay for some marketing to get people to even visit your online store, let alone convince them to buy from you. If you're just getting started, use social media channels to drive some traffic to your store. When I started selling organic beard care products during grad school, first I sold them to my friends at church. Then I set up an Etsy store and posted about it on my social media, and that helped me to sell out whenever I would make a small batch. I later moved from selling on Etsy to selling on my own website, which is currently being updated to avoid the Etsy selling fees. Another thing you can consider is writing blogs or creating content that highlights the items that you're selling, and then just direct people to check out your online store if they're interested in buying it. I wouldn't suggest starting out with paid ads because without understanding how they work, you'd honestly just be throwing your money away. So focus on organic traffic if you want to try selling in this way. So I know what you're probably thinking. So what about Amazon? Well, if you're selling used media such as books or DVDs or CDs, Amazon can be a good resource. However, there's a lot of considerations for learning what sells and what doesn't sell on Amazon. We'll have an entire episode about selling on Amazon in the future, but if you're selling used items other than media, it's not your optimal platform because it lends itself more so to selling new items. Hey there, I really hope you're enjoying this episode of After School Empire. If you're gaining any benefit from this podcast at all, could I ask you to do one thing? Please take a moment and share it with other teachers. Just a simple social media post or text message to a colleague not only helps this show keep growing, but can also be the first step in helping a friend that you care about learn how to gain more financial independence by launching and growing their own side hustle. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. So once you've chosen your platform, it's all about how you present and sell your items to potential customers. Here's how to optimize your listings for maximum profit. The most important part of your listing is the pictures. Your first impression counts immensely to online customers, so use clear, well-lit photos taken from multiple angles to showcase your items. If there are any flaws, be sure that these are clearly photographed too. You want to be as transparent as possible to avoid any issues after the sale. It's better for someone to buy a sweater knowing that there's a pinhole in the collar than to be upset when it arrives at their door and they find out then that it has that hole. Next, you have to put your items in the right categories. And this is crucial, especially on platforms like eBay, where buyers often search by category. If you're selling a video game, that's easy. Put it in the video games category. But sometimes things aren't as clean cut or black and white. For example, I recently found a Jimmy Buffett shirt from the 1970s at a yard sale. Should I post it under men's clothing, collectibles, musical instruments? When you find items that could be cross-posted, I suggest looking at the recently completed listings and the recently sold items to see which of comparable items that have sold for the highest prices and see which categories those were listed in when you're deciding where to put your item. So after you have your pictures and your category selected, you need an eye-catching title. This is critical for search visibility, so be sure to include brand names, colors, sizes, key features that a buyer might type into the search bar. The more specific you can be, the better your item will turn up in searches. For example, if you're selling a shirt, don't just say nice blue shirt. Instead, say men's, size large, navy blue, Brooks Brothers button-down Oxford. If it's new, also use the terms new or NWT, which means new with tags, or NWOT, which means new without tags. Make every single character count in your title to hook people who are scrolling for an item just like yours. Next, you're going to need to write a description for your item. eBay has actually come a long way in saving sellers time by using AI to help with writing descriptions, but I still revise it to meet my needs. When it comes to writing a good description, keep it concise but informative. You need to strike a balance between giving enough information to reassure your buyer that, hey, this is the item that I'm looking for, and also keeping it brief enough that they'll actually read it. Think more social media posts, less novel. Again, be sure to highlight any unique features or flaws to manage buyer expectations. Yeah, you may get a few bucks less because an item has a flaw, but it's better than getting negative feedback and a return request for not letting the customer know about that flaw up front. Now you need to determine the price for your item. Competitive pricing is going to be key. I'm not saying you always need to be the cheapest, but if you want a quick sale, pricing slightly lower than your competition can help. In other words, if there are 10 of an item for sale exactly like yours and they're listed for 20 bucks, list yours for $18.50. That's going to entice potential customers to click on yours. If it's the exact same item, why wouldn't they buy yours for $1.50 less? If you paid $2 for it at a yard sale, then you're still doing great. Finally, let's talk about payment. That's what we're here for, right? We all want to make extra money. We're teachers. We need to get paid. In 2024, digital payments are safest, especially for higher priced items. Platforms like PayPal offer buyer and seller protection, which adds a layer of security to your transactions. For in-person sales, cash is often king, but digital platforms like Venmo or Cash App are becoming more and more accepted and can protect you from carrying large amounts of cash. The fees for using these digital payment tools are minimal, they can be transferred directly to your bank account, and they open you up to a larger number of potential buyers. Heck, I've even been seeing people printing out their Venmo QR codes at yard sales for payment. So rather than people having to give them cash, they can just scan it and pay with their phones. So we've covered quite a bit today, from choosing the right platform to creating listings that sell, and each step of the process is going to enhance your profit margins and turn those weekend finds into some serious side hustle cash. I'd love to hear about your successes or any additional tips that you might have. So drop a comment below or send us a message at www.afterschoolempire.com. And while you're there, don't forget, if you want more tips and tricks on side hustling for teachers, sign up for the After School Empire newsletter. Until next time, remember, people want to give you money. You just have to find a reason for them to do so. And After School Empire is here to help you do just that.